You don't need to mix your music. Well, that's at least what a content creator named Roro is currently saying. I've seen this video pop up on my recommended feed, so I decided to go ahead and react to it. Just gonna pull out whatever talking points he makes and then just provide my feedback on it. So let's go ahead and get right into it.
Hello, Internet. So you have a song that you want to put out, but it's not mixed yet. But you like the way it sounds. Maybe you have to just touch it up a little bit, and for the most part, you're happy with it. I think you should just put it out. Let me explain why I think mixing is really not that important. First of all, this is not a new thing. This has been forever. There's always been music that comes out where the mix is not that good. And as long as it doesn't sound annoying or abrasive or too quiet, most people are not going to care. So if there's like one sound sticking out and it's way too loud, yeah, people will notice that. If your vocals are like way too quiet or way too loud and they're like abrasive or you can't really hear what you're saying, most people are not going to like that. But
So let me go ahead and jump in right there. So, starting with this first point is if you're a recording artist, you like the way the mix sounds, it hasn't been professionally mixed and mastered, you should go ahead and put it out. I agree with that point with a bit of a caveat. What's your ultimate goal with this particular song? Are you just testing it out? Is it going to be your next single? Are you just here to feed the fans? What's the overall purpose of this individual song that you're about to release? Now, if this is a song that you're going to perform, then you definitely want to get it mixed and mastered. Because if you play a song that's not properly mixed and mastered in a club next to another independent artist whose songs has been professionally mixed and mastered, the difference is gonna can kind of throw people off. It can impact how the song actually feels to the audience. So once again, if this is just a feeler track you want to put out there to test to feed your fans and see exactly if you can get some momentum, then go ahead and do it. However, if you plan on performing the song and putting it out there, then you definitely want to get it mixed and mastered. So let's go ahead and move on to the next point.
there's a lot of rap music that exists where the vocals are either very loud or very quiet and people listen to it and they like the song. I think a lot of, especially early on, and I'm still in this, even though I've been making music for a long time, I'm not an engineer. I do my best to mix and master my own music a lot of the time, but I have no like real engineering skills. I don't have any fancy plugins. I just do what I can and listen to my ears and just trust my ear that it'll come out the way I want it to. And that takes some time, but nowhere near as much time as learning how to properly mix and master.
So speaking on the fact that he's not an engineer, he mixes his own music and just basically goes with what he feels like. This is definitely a good starting point for recording artists to do. We essentially call this a rough mix. So you're making something at home, you're doing what you can with the plugins that you have, you're getting things to feel that the way that you want them to feel, and you're essentially doing like self mixing and mastering. That's a good thing because that's going to help you to craft the sounds and the textures that you want for your own unique vibe as an artist. And this can go pretty far. You know, you can have happy accidents while messing with the plugins. You can do certain things to your voice that you like personally that you can convey to the engineer in the future. If you do your own mixing and mastering at home, continue to do that and then build a relationship with an engineer, preferably a local engineer. But if you can't find a local engineer in your area, then look online, see who you can find, whose style that you like, who's mixing music that sounds similar to yours. And the fact that you have a rough mix at home, you can send that to the engineer, then the engineer can bring that version of what you made up. Or you can give the engineer creative license to essentially do their own thing. So there's different schools of thought on that. Continue to do your rough mixes at home, build a relationship with the engineer that really knows your sound, and then go from there.
That takes some time, but nowhere near as much time as learning how to properly mix and master. Because depending on the genre, a clean mix and a clean master might not even be what you want. You know, like especially in like underground rap, there's so many kids that record on their phone with BandLab and they put their songs out and they get millions of plays. You know what I mean? It doesn't really matter. It's all about style and taste. So if you listen to one of your songs and you're like, I like this song a lot, but the mix and the master just isn't there yet, all you have to do is just get it to sound decent to your ears.
Like you said, there's artists out there who are making underground music who do have a sound that's distorted or not quite as clean and polished. And this is essentially a unique style that they're putting out. The only exception to that, I would say, is translation. Is the mix that you're doing by yourself as a recording artist going to translate into smaller speakers, into large arenas, into different bars that you're going to play your music in? One of my concerns about artists mixing and mastering their own music is the comparison between your mix that you're doing yourself, let's say another artist who's going to perform right after you or before you. It can kind of change the energy in the room. So you can release it yourself as an independent artist and just once again test the field. But if you're going to perform it, I still recommend a professional mix and master if it's in your budget.
One is making sure that the song itself is loud. And now that doesn't necessarily mean like slam it with compression, slam it with limiting. That's really common in like pop music and stuff. And I think a lot of like when I was first getting into like mixing and mastering, that's what I would do. I would literally put a compressor on every single track and just crank it, and then put a compressor on the master and just crank it. And it would just be like a wall of sound. If that's what you're going for, that's super easy to do. And to most people's ear, unless it's too harsh, that's going to sound fine, you know? But if you want a little more nuance in your mix, all you really have to do is make sure that the master is loud. So listen to your song, listen to a song that you like similar in your style, and see how loud it is compared to that one, and just turn up the volume. You can put a limiter on it so it doesn't clip. But all you got to do is just make sure it's louder. That's usually a huge step with mixing and mastering.
Okay, so now we're getting into loudness. This is a somewhat of a touchy subject. You mentioned using limiters. Now, one thing that would happen, especially back in the day, we use limiters like the L2 by Waves to get the loudness cranked up all the way, so that way recording artists, whenever they were done recording, they can head straight to the club, perform their songs essentially the next day. So we would just unfortunately squash the dynamics, get things really loud, so then artists could just come in, record, get things sounding nice and good, hit it with the L2 limiter, and send them on their way. And those were still essentially rough mixes, but sometimes these different indie recording artists didn't really have the budget to come back and get a full mix and master. This is the money I have, this is my budget, it sounds good in the studio, sounds good in my car. I really have no choice but to go use this to perform. So make it sound as good as I can, and let me go ahead and perform it. So that's one way you can use loudness to have a song, hit, so to speak. These days, I do like the way the God Particle sounds on the master bus. We're able to get things loud. The stereo image sounding good with God Particle. It doesn't sound too smashed depending on how you use it. So if you use a plugin like the God Particle and you use it well, then you shouldn't have too many issues dealing with squash dynamic. He also mentioned comparing your song to another song that you may like to get the loudness to match. One plugin I want to put you guys on is one called Metric AB. It's a way for you to essentially have a list of songs that you like inside of your DAW, and then you're able to play your song. So you can play your song and compare it with different songs that you enjoy that you want to have a similar loudness to. It's a really, really easy to use plugin. And then you're also able to skip through different sections of the professional commercially released songs. So that way you can skip to different parts. So the loudness may sound good in the verse. Does it sound good in the hook? Does it sound good in the bridge? Does it sound good in the outro? So you can compare your song, the commercially released song, and try to get it as good and loud as possible. So make sure you guys check out God Particle, Metric AB. So try to use those tools to help you get as close as possible. And another thing I want you guys to look out for whenever you're using something like Metric AB and comparing your song to other people's song as far as loudness, always kind of watch the low end of the beat that you're using. The low end can take up a lot of space and headroom, so you could be a little confused onto why your song isn't as loud as another person's song. the low end of the beat that you're using may be too much and it's eating up so much sonic space that you can't get it as loud as the professional mix and master. So watch the low end of the beat that you're using. That is more than likely going to be the culprit that's preventing you from getting your song as loud as you want it to get.
Like I said, I'm not an engineer myself, but something I've learned from my friends who are engineers is you can do a lot in a mix without doing too much. Like you don't have to have like 15 plugins on each track and dissect the littlest bits. Like if you want to do that, you should. But I would almost think of that as more of like a creative element to mixing as opposed to like objective mixing. A lot of the heavy lifting in mixing is really just volume, EQ. You can do so much with just turning stuff up and down and EQing. Seriously, like you don't even have to do it that much because as long as stuff doesn't stick out and it doesn't sound annoying or abrasive, people are going to think it's fine. I mean, honestly, I hear songs that are like super popular by big artists and the vocals will be so harsh. Like there's so much high end, it's compressed to shit. It's so loud in the mix, but people don't care. So why do you care?
Okay, so he just mentioned not needing to do too much to achieve a good mix. So this to me is a question of what does your source material sound like? How quality is the beat that you're using? How quality is the vocals that you're recording? You know, where's our starting point? Is our starting point, let's just say a 1 out of 10? Is it a 3 and you're trying to bring it up to a 6? Is it a 5 and you're trying to bring it up to a 9? So if you have good source material, then yeah, to get a good feeling final mix at home as a indie recording artist, it's not going to be super challenging because you're starting with a good quality starting point. Everything already sounds relatively good. It feels good, and you're just kind of tweaking, blending things together with, let's just say, volume, compression, EQ, maybe even a little bit of saturation, touching things up on the bus processing. Then you can get things to sound good. But to me, just giving a little bit of pushback, I would say this is a question of how good does my source material sound like? And that's going to essentially answer everything. So for the indie recording artists out there, please make sure you invest in a good interface, a good microphone. Make sure your room try to have some type of treatment or something to kind of keep the bad room reverb from getting into the microphone to make things kind of sound, cheap. So try to treat things, try to manage your source materials, make them sound as good as possible. So that way later, whenever you're mixing and putting things together, you don't have to do too much heavy lifting.
Why do you care? You shouldn't care so much, especially because people don't think of this mentality with mixing as much as they do with creating music, where it's like a lot of people will go into something, they'll make a project and they'll be like, this isn't as good as it could be, but I'm going to put it out anyway because I like it and I'm just going to make the next one even better. But with mixing, people get so caught up in the little details, they'll never put it out because they're like, the mix isn't good, even though I love the song.
That's a really good point that he just mentioned there. Sometimes artists have a creative way of preventing themselves from making a bad decision. So what do I mean by that? Sometimes there is a dormant amount of fear inside of artists that they really don't want to make a decision. They want to wait for everything to be perfect, to have a perfect rollout, and then they're just going to open up the floodgates and everything's going to run smoothly. I would say put music out there, test it. Okay, so you don't have a perfect mix and master. Okay, so you don't have a perfect Instagram page. You don't have a perfect live stage performance. You still have to put things out there because you never know what is inside the song that you're making that's going to resonate and connect with people. You'll never know if it just stays on your hard drive. So artists, please stop finding creative ways of blocking yourself from making a decision and receiving feedback or being criticized, because that same block that's preventing you from pain is the same block that's preventing you from growth. So take the risk, put it out there, and see what people think about it.
Good, even though I love the song. But I'm telling you, it doesn't matter. As long as it sounds decent, it really doesn't matter. And again, I know I'm repeating myself a little bit already, but it has to be good enough to the point where you like it. If you like it and you think it sounds good, there's probably not that much you have to do to the mix in order to put it out. And as time progresses, you're going to learn how to mix things better. You're going to learn how to get your sound better. Because I think that's another huge thing is like, again, it's easier for people to imagine the creative process of making a song and making it their own. But with mixing and mastering, there's a lot of the mentality of there's a right way to do it, even with the most creative artists. But that's just not true. That's just not how music works. Mixing and mastering is also something that is creative, or it can be creative. And the way you mix and master your songs can be part of your sound. It can be part of your creative process. Especially if you're a self-produced artist and you make all your own music and stuff like that. I think that's honestly really important.
Yeah, that's definitely another cosign for me. Once again, using the tools that you have currently to create and craft your own sound as a self-produced artist, great. You're going to not only gain a new skill set, this is also going to help you to communicate with the engineer, let's just say sometime down the road in the future. You're going to be able to tell an engineer, okay, it sounds like it's compressing too much, or it sounds like the release on the compressor is a little too slow. I'm hearing a little bit too much distortion on my ad lib, let's just say at the beginning of the hook. You're going to be able to know the terminology to communicate with the engineer, which is going to be able to help them achieve the sound that you're looking for much more efficiently, as opposed to just using lingo and then the engineer has to try to dissect and figure out what you're really trying to say. Having the vocabulary to communicate with the engineer is going to help you guys be on the same page and the same wavelength, so you can even achieve different and greater results in the future.
If you make music that requires a nice, squeaky, clean mix, then you're just going to have to figure out how to do that. Or you're going to have to find somebody to do it, or you're going to have to pay somebody to do it. But honestly, and I know a lot of other artists have had this experience. Most people don't see the same vision that you do for your song. So even if you hire somebody, you pay them a ton of money to mix and master your song, it might not sound like how you want it to sound because they're just doing it in a way that's objectively good. But maybe your song's mixing doesn't need to be objectively good. You know, like there's so much old punk music that was like DIY recorded. It sounds like garbage, but that's part of the aesthetic because it's DIY. And that same thing applies to rap music now, like underground rap. There's a lot of music that comes out where the mixing is really not that good, or it's like barely even mixed. But it doesn't matter because it's all about the vibe. It's all about, you know, portraying the energy that you want to portray. And if you were to take like an old punk record that sounds like garbage and mix it really clean and nice, it might not have that same magic. You know what I mean? Music is all about magic, and people forget that music is art and there's no rules.
Yeah, this is a good point about maintaining the magic even after having a professional mix and master. Some engineers get a bit confused onto why sometimes artists don't want to come back to them after they've had their song mixed and mastered, because the engineer could have a vision for the song that diverges from what the artist actually wants. So it's important for the artist and the engineer to be on the same page. Once again, that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about learning certain tools so you can communicate more efficiently with the engineer, so they're not kind of chasing their tail trying to figure out what you're actually trying to communicate. Also, there is definitely a point of having engineers making things a little too clean. If a kick is real dirty, or if the bass is real loud, maybe the engineer is used to mixing for labels, big labels, and they want things to sound a certain kind of way, and you're an underground artist, you want things, there's a new vibe that's kind of coming up within your city, and you don't want to lose that certain type of grunge or magic that's been created. Mixing it yourself can definitely help you achieve that sound, but also make sure you communicate that to the engineers in the notes that you provide to them. Or if you're going to meet with a local engineer, make sure you communicate that to them. Sometimes engineers are just going to go and feel like, oh, well, I don't need to use this young kid or this young person's rough mix because they don't know what they're doing. they're using FL Studio or BandLab, and they're just throwing stuff together. I'm gonna show you what a good mix sounds like, and then they're just gonna cut away, mix away, polish away all the dirtiness, all the soul that you were able to capture in an attempt to make something that they feel like should be commercially acceptable. Get that rough mix as good as possible, but also, once again, make sure you communicate to the engineer, hey, this is what I like about the rough mix. Maintain that whenever you make the final mix, because we like that. Sometimes engineers do complain about having a list of revisions. I've been there. So artists, please speak up and communicate.
Get that music is art and there's no rules. So if you like it, it doesn't matter. Like, the odds of you getting a song like on the radio or something, it's so low as it is. But even so, like, especially in the modern day, like, it really isn't as big of a deal as people think it is. Unless you're on like some major label, but even then, there's major label artists that their mixes don't sound good because that's part of the aesthetic. So, basically, I'm making this video because this is something that I still deal with, and I know a lot of people that go back and forth with this all the time. Mixing and mastering should not be the be-all, end-all of your song. It should be the finishing touches. It should be like the cherry on top, basically. Just sanding it down a little bit to get it perfect to your ears. If you're making a sculpture and it doesn't look like realistic, but it looks cool how you think you want it to look, that doesn't mean it's bad, Like, if you don't varnish your painting exactly the way you're supposed to, that you learned in art school, it doesn't matter. Do you think it sounds good? Do you think it looks cool? Do you think it's good art?
That's a great point. Music is subjective. That kind of gets to a certain, I guess you could say, certain types of struggles that I've had as a producer and slash engineer who's aging a bit. So I'll hear certain things in younger artists' music, and I keep thinking, okay, are they rapping off beat on purpose, or are they rapping off beat because they're wanting things to get nudged on beat? Like, what exactly is happening here? Is the rhythm off on purpose, or is this an accident and they're looking to me to tighten up the timing? So if you are able to get the rough mix the way you want it, once again, communicate that in the notes. Hey, we like things sounding like this. We don't want you to change the timing and getting everything perfectly on beat. We like, this is the new style, this is the new wave, which is relatively new to me, because rapping on beat or having a certain type of groove whenever I'm listening to music, that's relatively important, or was relatively important. But once again, like you said, there's no rules in music, and if you like things, the swing of the vocals to the beat to be off, and that's the new groove, then that's the new groove. As producers and engineers, especially as we start to get a little bit older, we need to learn that the new generation is creating their own wave, and we're here to assist them in achieving the sound that they're looking for.
Yeah. I just wanted to talk about this because this is something I've been thinking about a lot myself and talking to other people in my life about. So hopefully you can get some inspiration, especially if you're a newer artist. Just put music out. Like, again, don't do it before you feel ready, but also be honest with yourself, because you might be procrastinating and telling yourself you're not ready, when in reality, you're just putting it off because you're stuck and don't know what to do next. Just put it out and just keep making more. And I promise you, you will figure it out. You will get better. You'll like it more and more every time, and you'll learn more and more every time.
That was a great final point. I would just say, just do it. A lot of times, artists, you're not going to feel ready. You're always going to feel, I need to change this. I need to do this. I need to do that. You're never going to feel ready. You just have to put it out there and let people react to it once again. So yeah, I would say just put your music out. You're never really going to be ready as a recording artist. You're creative, and as creatives, we can kind of be somewhat scatterbrained and a little bit too harsh on ourselves. You can make a song, let's just say 4 months ago, and then now today you feel like you're way better, and now your friends or your management is telling you, hey, you need to release the song now, but you feel like, wait, I'm way more skilled now. I don't want to release this. This is my old work. But like I said earlier, you never know what people may gravitate towards. So put that music out, let the public react to it. You never know what kind of fans you're going to get. And of course, you're going to have more new things in the pipeline. Since creatives tend to not like certain types of structure in a way, You know, maybe even try creating different types of deadlines and goals for yourself. Don't wait for other people in your circle to push you to do it. Put the music out there, people react one way. Put this music out there, people react another way. Just keep going. Keep shooting your shots. Don't wait for the perfect shot, then shoot it. And then there's a whole new level of disappointment when you wait on this one song that you think is going to be totally perfect, and then the public doesn't really react well to it. That's a huge disappointment. But if you just keep continuously putting out songs consistently, you're going to start to build your fan base, improve your skills, and you're also going to get in the habit of releasing music before you feel ready. You just have to be ready. You may not feel ready, but you need to be ready because you can't wait for perfection. So once again, shout out to this content creator. I just want to give my viewpoints on it. His name is Roro. I believe that's pronounced Roro. My channel is here to help educate people, so I never talk down on other content creators. I'm just here to watch a video, pull out points, see if I agree with one point, disagree with another point, add some of my context to it, add some of my personal views or opinions to it, and then you guys go from there. Well, hey, my name is Desmond A. Artists, make sure you go to DesmondABeats.com if you want to lease beats for your next project. Producers, if you're looking for sounds, go to DesmondASounds.com. Get some sounds, get some loops, and use it for your next beat. Make sure you hit like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I'm Desmond A, and I'll see you next time. Peace. Desmond A.